As with many Tri-Cities youth, Macarthy Whyzel can often be found at home making peanut butter sandwiches. But unlike most youth, he often makes dozens at a time, and packs them up along with drinks, warm clothing, and bedding, which he distributes to the needy here in the Tri-Cities. Coming up on We've Got Issues, Nancy Furness interviews Macarthy Whyzel, founder of the Uplifting Group.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. We're filming today at Coquitlam City Centre Library, and we'd like to thank the library for giving us this venue to carry out the interviews. And just before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we're filming on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of Coquitlam First Nation. So we thank the Coquitlam people who live on these lands and continue to care for the lands and the waters and all that lies above and below. So today we're joined by Macarthy Whyzel of the Uplifting Group. So thanks so much for joining us today, Macarthy.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Uplifting Group?
Absolutely.
What is the goal of the group?
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Macarthy, 24 years old, Coquitlam kid, born and raised. I'm currently in my fourth year of my bachelor's degree in Criminology at local Douglas College here. And I'm very passionate about the community. And so that's been a kind of a staple as to who I am and who I've always been. And right now, the goal of the Uplifting Group and what we're all about is supporting our folks in Tri-Cities who are struggling with homelessness and doing what we can to uplift them.
Oh, well, thank you. It's some really good and much needed work that you're doing in the Tri-Cities. Can you tell us a little bit about the story behind the Uplifting Group? What inspired you to start this?
It's a good question. It goes pretty far back. So when I was 5, 6 years old, my parents started taking us down to Hastings, actually. And so we were delivering food, and they wanted to instill in my brother and I at a really young age that these are folks that ought to be, looked after and supported in any way we can. And so I did that, as young as I can remember, essentially. But the sort of origin story of the Uplifting Group actually goes back to 2014. And in 2014, I was just getting into high school. I wanted to start giving back to the community. Didn't really know what that meant or how I was going to go about it. But I said, why don't I start a haunted house? And so that was my start at charity work. In 2014, I put a sign out raising donations, some lights, some decorations. And that was my beginning. I'm proud to say that over 10 years, this was our final year actually. In the 10 years, we had raised just under $20,000 for local charities, had over 150,000 people in attendance over that decade long, and so it was an amazing community event. But the way it ties into the Uplifting Group is that last Halloween, so Halloween 2023, we raised money for Sum's Place, which is a shelter just across the bridge in Surrey. And so we raised just over $4,000 for them. We went out, we bought out essentially 4 Walmarts of items that they had requested. It was this great experience. We dropped it all off. We got a tour. It was, amazing experience. It sort of touched back on what I used to do when I was really little.
Right, brought back some memories.
And so as I was kind of driving away, I thought to myself, I don't want to wait till next year to do something again. And that idea got me going with, why not just start something on my own? And I've stumbled into the Uplifting Group, and it's just grown ever since.
And it's grown and grown.
It has. 14 months, we went from nothing to, quite a big organization.
Wow. And can you maybe tell us a little bit about what kind of services you provide to the unhoused community or what you're giving?
Yeah. So we are a weekday outreach program. So we're there to support folks who are struggling with homelessness in the Tri-Cities Tuesday through Fridays. At the bare minimum, every day we feed folks. That is like our fundamental goal, is to ensure that someone's eaten and no one's going hungry, essentially. However, that's obviously not only what we do, and so beyond that, we are there to provide items that are weather related. So wintertime, that's all about keeping people warm, and so ensuring
socks and blankets,
blankets, tarps, tents, jackets, you name it, it's in my car and we have it, and we're there to support folks. But beyond just providing items for folks, we're ready to respond to overdoses should we come across them.
So everybody's got Narcan?
Everyone's got Narcan with us. We carry it every single shift we go out. We also do a lot of wellness checks, which is something that doesn't often get discussed. It's sort of a preemptive check on folks before you need to get to an overdose response. And so we do hundreds of wellness checks, just making sure folks are breathing, they're doing okay. And then the last thing that we do which is sort of that structural component, is because we're on the ground 30-20 in the area in Tri-Cities every day, we're sort of the intermediate between folks and then the big organizations. And so we've gotten to know big organizations, Hope for Freedom being one of them, BC Housing, folks who are at the welfare office. And so if anyone's reaching out for something, we can make the phone calls and bridge the gap between the two.
That's nice. It's like a liaison where you're not sort of a big threatening entity.
Exactly.
You're just, and they know your faces and you're familiar.
We're very well familiar down there. And also a lot of it too is it's a lot of the big organizations, they don't necessarily have the time and resources to do the outreach work, right? Yes. They have their own things that they're running. And so, it's nice that we can be sort of the intermediate between the two parties.
No, it's a lot of hard work and good work and heart-rending work, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How many unhoused people are there in the Tri-Cities? Do you have any idea? And where are they? Are they scattered? Is it just the one community at 3020 Gordon, or where are they?
It's a
Without
great
telling
question.
us.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I believe the last count would have been in 2022, and I think it said 160. It's definitely well above that. I obviously don't have specific numbers, but I can definitely share that right now in the wintertime, we're serving at least roughly 40 meals every single day.
Wow, and is that just at 3020?
That is
Gordon?
80% just 30-20, with 20% kind of scattered. To your kind of second part of your question, most folks we find are out 30-20. Okay. It is really essentially the only area where resources all kind of just come together.
So, Macarthy, can you tell us, do you have an estimate of how many people are unhoused in the Tri-Cities, and also where you might find them? Are they all at 3020 Gordon, or are they scattered throughout the Tri-Cities?
Yeah, good question. So last, I think, official count would have been 2022, which was an estimate of 160. I would put that number probably double now, closer to 300.
Okay.
However, that number fluctuates depending on the time of year. So summertime, we saw way more folks. As we're getting into the winter now, a lot of folks are trying to get into shelters or any sort of housing. And so I know multiple people that they've gone to other cities just because beds have been offered. And so there's organizations also at play that are helping get people to the beds where they're being allocated. Right. So yeah, I think I would say in the summertime we peak close to 300. However, winter you probably get half that, just because most folks are trying to get inside anywhere.
Where are those numbers living in the winter in the Tri-Cities? Like, I know some of them are in the tents, but are they scattered throughout the Tri-Cities in some kind of shelters or all in tents? Or?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think primarily folks are around 3020. Definitely there's many folks who have sort of a stable house, if you will call it that, the tent on the block, and so that's where they call home. Right. I also know that as of actually last night, it was the first night of the winter shelters now being open.
December 1st.
December 1st. Yes. And so I know also that the pickup spot for them is like a block away. So I'd say in the wintertime most folks will congregate in that area. They'll get access to the shelters, pick up, drop off, and then, as I said, our organization and many others that are at play all come down to 3020 to support folks, as that's where we know we can find most people.
And where they know they can find you.
Exactly, yeah.
So they are picked up in the evening and then they're dropped back in the morning? Is that how it works?
From my understanding, we have the shelters for the next 4 months. So until I believe the end of April or mid-April, something like that.
Oh, is it that late?
Yeah, okay. which is great. I think pickup is at 8:45, 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
And then drop-offs at 7 a.m. And I know that the drop-off includes they get a breakfast with it. I think they get a dinner as well, plus obviously a warm place to stay.
Right, right. Somewhere out of the cold, which is the main thing, because it did dip down last night.
It's already getting chilly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was below freezing this morning.
Yeah.
So
the frost was on the windshield this morning, and so folks are fortunately now able to access it should they want to get inside.
Are there enough shelter beds for everybody, or are there people being left out in the cold still?
From what I understand, there are enough because of these winter shelters.
Okay.
However, I will say that October, November was quite cold.
It was cold and wet.
And wet, yeah.
Yes.
And we had no winter shelters, and so I'd say now we're definitely providing a bed for most people. However, that doesn't happen 365 days a year like it should. So yeah.
So can you tell us, what have you learned about the whole situation of people experiencing homelessness? Can you tell us, have you heard stories like how did they get there? We've had recently a city councillor in Port Coquitlam say that they're simply people that don't want to work.
Yes.
Is that what you're seeing, or are there many different paths to...
So that's definitely not reality. I'll tell you that much. I think that the path to homelessness is obviously different for everybody. However, I've kind of come to see two broad categories, if you will, and I don't mind sharing the two that I've seen. Sure. The first one is sort of that stereotypical, I've lost my job, can't pay rent, and I've just, within a matter of days, you fall right down. And so I've met quite a few folks who are battling that fight, and
so many that are so close to that too,
and
right?
on that teetering point, right? Exactly. And so there's that category, but then there's also the category, and this is definitely more aligned with folks who are also struggling from some form of addiction, and that is extreme childhood trauma.
Yes.
And we don't need to get into the details of the horror stories, but these are nightmare childhood settings. And these individuals will, grow up with no support, no family, nothing. And so, again, a different way of falling through the cracks. But yeah, some real horrific childhood experiences.
So a lot of trauma involved in there.
Yeah.
So when you do your work, like you said you do wellness checks, so you're going out there, do you partner or collaborate with anybody, or for that part of it, or for gathering food and supplies? Like how does that part work?
Good question. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, obviously. Right now we have two partnerships with two organizations located in the Tri-Cities. The first, Low Entropy Foundation, and so they support us with a weekly donation of bedding, blankets, jackets. Their thrift store collects stuff and puts it to the side for us, which is amazing. And then I don't know if you've heard of the Immigrant Link Society.
Yes.
And so Rayhan and their crew, they support us with once a month they donate a couple £100 of food and drinks to us, which is a huge help, massive help. And so a lot of all the food there goes into various outreach initiatives that we do. And so that's behind the scenes. In terms of the work that we do and being on the ground, we don't really have any collaborations when we're out there. Obviously, we have, as I mentioned, all those connections for referrals and different organizations that we're in touch with. But when we're out there, it's just myself plus the volunteers that we've slowly brought on over the last year and a bit.
Can I ask, what kind of food do you give, or what's...
Great question.
I'm curious.
100%. No, it's a good question. So every day when we're down there, we provide a sandwich. And so we prep roughly, depending on the time of year, it's between 30 and 60 sandwiches every day.
Okay.
So I've become a master Subway maker. Should you
ever need another?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'll be good to go. So no, we provide a sandwich every day for folks. Okay. Beyond the sandwich, and again, this is depending on time of year, there's something to drink. Summertime, it's all about water. That's what folks need.
Keep hydrated.
Exactly. But juice, pop, whatever else that we get donated, kind of goes with it. Beyond that, we also bring down snack packs with us, which is typically carbs, protein bars, and then the odd candy here and there should we get it donated. And oftentimes, like I said, the meal, the snacks, it's also not necessarily about the food sometimes, but it's about the bridging of, it's a start of a conversation. It opens the door to say, hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. And kind of the break bread term with folks. And so,
Well, I think, making those connections, I think, is super important.
100%.
And something that maybe some people don't have a lot of connections. So to know that somebody cares and that they're out there and they're looking for you and, wanting to provide food and comfort, it's sometimes that in itself is a huge service, right?
Yeah, and it's always interesting because sometimes we'll find folks in, like I said, quite hidden spots in the community. And oftentimes the reactions they're always positive, but it's always like, holy crap, how'd you find me? And it's like, hey, that's what we're here to do,
Surprise.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, yeah. So are there people living in shelters not in tents, but just in different places throughout the Tri-Cities too?
So there's only one shelter, which is the 3030. Right. That's the only public shelter.
Right.
And so they are, I think, always they're private, so I don't know for sure, but it seems they're always at max capacity.
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're overflowing.
If not, they're overflowing. And so I always say whenever I can, there's definitely a need for more shelters.
Absolutely.
3 cities, 1 shelter, it's not adequate. And
with a growing population, right?
Massive population, between the 3 cities, 100%.
Can you tell us a little bit, you said that you had volunteers.
Yeah.
And it must be wonderful to be able to share this work with like-minded people.
Yeah.
tell us about your volunteers. Who are, like, where do they come from?
Yeah, so I would say 95% of our volunteers are from the Tri-Cities. Typically, they reach out to us through either they've come across us on Facebook, Instagram, what have you. And it's oftentimes, folks who want to give back, and they've just found us as the organization that's how they can then give back. And so, we have, like I said, we have about just over a dozen volunteers now, all amazing people who, are very, very kind to give their time, and I'm able to sort of also expose them and share with them the realities of what homelessness looks like.
Right. I think education is huge, right?
Absolutely.
An awareness and an understanding of why people are in these positions. Are the volunteers young, old, across the spectrum?
I'd say across the spectrum. I have a few students who are currently at Douglas and SFU. I have 2 individuals who are retired, and so we kind of have folks sort of all across the board. And the common denominator is just folks who want to help, right? And that's what we look for. It's like, doesn't matter who you are, as long as you want to help. Come on,
Yeah. No, we had talked about we're moving into our winter, and it's getting a lot colder, and most of the people are inside. So are there certain things that people need, especially during the winter, whether they're inside or not at night, or does it change what they need? Yeah,
it's a good question. Wintertime, it's always about keeping warm, right? And that statement, as kind of simple as it sounds, can be very challenging in reality. And so for us, that looks like layering. Layering is huge. Folks will typically wear 4 pairs of pants. 5, 6 jackets I've seen. And so layers on layers on layers. Also, we're Vancouver, it rains a lot, and so
and
that can ruin someone's entire day if they get soaked through. It can be very challenging.
How do they get dry? Once you're wet, how do you possibly get dry?
Really kind organizations that are there to help. And so oftentimes, like I've experienced it, where someone will essentially strip down to their last layer, and we'll just completely give them a whole new outfit with multiple pants, jackets, hoodies, even shirts sometimes.
Because there's no way of drying the clothes that they've got.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. There's absolutely no way. And so, another part of our work is, and we always, whenever we have a platform to say it, one of the things we need the most is tents. Because folks who can't access a shelter oftentimes will either walk all night long because they have nowhere to stay, or they'll shelter under some building until oftentimes security management, they get moved, right? And so if we can provide a tent for folks, it allows them, one, a place to stay dry, something to call home, and some form of security as well.
I cannot imagine walking all night and then having to face the next day.
Hungry, tired,
exhausted and cold.
Exactly.
No, that's Can we talk a little bit about you? You are a 4th year criminology student at Douglas College now. How does your area of study, how does that interface with what you're doing and the work that you're doing? Do you hope at some point to bring those 2 together? And
it's a good question. So I'm getting close to graduation, right? And so that reality is coming. And one, I will say, I think my education has set me up quite well for the work that we do. Taking a plethora of classes, mental health, addiction, all different types of classes has given me a little bit of the foundational knowledge for the work that we do. But as I now kind of near graduation, I would love to potentially take the Uplifting Group to the next stage, and kind of do that full time. However, that's come May, and so
it's coming. Though.
It's coming. I know. I do need to figure it out. But I am looking to going the nonprofit route.
Okay.
And kind of becoming a registered charity, and that way potentially, put what we're doing to the next stage.
Well, and I think it's definitely a gap that you're filling there. It's not like there's any other organization that is doing what you're doing. So there is a place for it.
Well, that's just it. Sorry to cut you off. But
no, you didn't.
What I've seen before, and I've heard sort of in conversations and such, is that, we've kind of been told that part of what we do, and it's been criticized, as the Band-Aid organization. We're not ending homelessness. We're not stopping it. And the beauty of that, and what I like to sort of rebuttal that with, is that yes, we definitely need BC Housing, big organizations, treatment operations, detox centers. We need those organizations, but we also need people on the ground every day. We need someone to be there to ensure folks don't go hungry, to be able to make phone calls, referrals, wellness checks, because without us, folks struggle on a day-to-day basis, and that's the gap that we're trying to fill right now.
Exactly. So you're not like solving the bigger problem, but you're making life livable and bearable for people and providing those services.
And we're trying to also, it's important. We're also trying to be that stepping stone to when someone says, hey, I'm thinking about treatment, it's like, okay, we can talk about that. We have connections, we can make that happen. Because a lot of folks have difficulty, and we've seen it. It's difficult going from, I want to get better or I want to change, to then actually getting better and changing.
Or to having to wait for, 3 weeks till there's a bed somewhere. It's like, I'm ready to go, okay, let's go, right? That window is very small.
Very small. It's a very small window. And so we do our best to sort of capitalize on that. Yeah.
So more resources, lots of compassion, and keep doing the work that you're doing. Do you have any last words to share with us about the unhoused population or experiences with homelessness?
Yeah, I think that I always like to sort of end off with saying that, oftentimes we see in the media a vilification of homelessness. It's, rarely something good being published in any sort of, online domain. And so I always like to say that, if you want to get a good perspective of what homelessness looks like, come out for us, volunteer with us, reach out.
That's wonderful. And how can people reach you?
So we're on Instagram. That's pretty much our domain, our website, if you will. Okay. So the Uplifting Group on Instagram. Reach out to us. I run the account. Send us a message, and we'll get you on your way.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. This is We've Got Issues, and we've been talking to Macarthy Whyzel from the Uplifting Group.
For those of you who may have missed it, we leave you today with a brief look at Macarthy's last Halloween house.